Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone. The story of Native American displacement is one of the most harrowing and underexplored chapters in world history. Beneath the broad strokes of colonial expansion and the formation of the United States lies a labyrinth of dark secrets, unfolding tales of betrayal, exploitation, and systematic erasure of cultures that thrived for millennia. The vibrant traditions, languages, and social structures of Native American tribes, each uniquely attuned to the vast lands they inhabited, were deliberately dismantled through policies masked as progress. This historical narrative is often condensed into sanitized versions, but the truth is far more disturbing and demands an unflinching exploration. At the heart of this tragic saga is the relentless pursuit of land and resources, driven by an insatiable colonial appetite. Early treaties, often signed under duress or through deceit, became tools of dispossession rather than mutual agreements. The doctrine of manifest destiny emboldened settlers and government authorities alike, cloaking their ambitions in divine justification. Yet, what this expansion left in its wake was the systematic dismantling of Native American life. The forced migrations, most notoriously the Trail of Tears, were not merely logistical endeavors but acts of calculated cruelty, executed with a cold indifference to the suffering they inflicted. Families were torn apart, ancestral homes abandoned, and countless lives lost to exposure, disease, and starvation. Beyond the physical displacement, cultural genocide became an insidious weapon wielded with devastating effect. Government-sanctioned boarding schools aimed to strip Native American children of their identities, severing the generational transmission of language, traditions, and spiritual practices. These institutions, often run by religious organizations, imposed brutal regimens designed to civilize indigenous youth, punishing them for speaking their native tongues or practicing their customs. The scars of these schools are still felt today, manifesting in intergenerational trauma and the struggle to reclaim lost heritage. Land theft was further entrenched through legislation masquerading as reform. The Dawes Act of 1887 epitomized this deception, ostensibly offering Native Americans the promise of self-sufficiency through individual land ownership. In reality, it fragmented tribal lands, opening vast tracts to opportunistic settlers and corporations. This policy not only eroded communal landholding traditions, but also facilitated the wholesale transfer of indigenous territories into non-native hands, deepening the economic and social marginalization of native communities. Environmental destruction compounded these injustices. Sacred lands, once central to spiritual practices and subsistence lifestyles, were desecrated by industrial ventures. The extraction of natural resources, oil, coal, timber, disrupted ecosystems and poisoned water sources, severing the spiritual and practical connections Native peoples had with their environment. Sacred sites were bulldozed or flooded, often without consultation or consent, reflecting a broader disregard for indigenous sovereignty and values. The story of Native American displacement is also a narrative of broken promises. Treaties negotiated in good faith were routinely violated, rewritten, or ignored altogether when they no longer served colonial interests. Legal battles to uphold these agreements have spanned centuries, with Native tribes frequently entangled in bureaucratic red tape or facing outright legal dismissal. These betrayals were not isolated incidents, but part of a systematic strategy to undermine indigenous autonomy and control over their lands. Violence and militarized campaigns further solidified the brutal displacement of Native peoples. Government-sanctioned massacres, such as those at Sand Creek and Wounded Knee, were not tragic anomalies but calculated acts of terror designed to suppress resistance and instill fear. These brutal assaults decimated populations and sent an unmistakable message. Any defiance of expansionist policies would be met with lethal force. Assimilation policies extended beyond boarding schools to include forced sterilizations and the suppression of Native religions and governance systems. In the 20th century, Native American women were disproportionately targeted for involuntary sterilization, stripping them of their reproductive autonomy. Simultaneously, traditional governance structures were undermined, replaced by councils that align more closely with federal oversight, eroding self-determination. Media and historical narratives have also played a role in perpetuating the marginalization of Native peoples.
Popular culture romanticized or villainized indigenous identities, reducing complex societies to stereotypes. Educational systems glossed over or entirely omitted the realities of Native American suffering, creating a collective amnesia that persists in contemporary discourse. This erasure of history contributes to the ongoing struggle for recognition and justice. Despite this oppressive history, Native American resilience remains a powerful counter-narrative. Efforts to reclaim languages, revive traditions, and assert sovereignty are testaments to enduring strength. Movements such as Standing Rock's protest against the Dakota Access Pipeline have brought indigenous rights to the forefront of global consciousness, signaling a continued fight against the exploitation and erasure that has plagued Native communities for centuries. To fully grasp the gravity of Native American displacement is to confront a legacy of calculated oppression masked as nation-building. It is a history that demands acknowledgement and redress, not as a footnote but as a central narrative in understanding the foundations of modern America. The dark secrets buried beneath the stories of westward expansion and progress reveal a nation built on broken promises, stolen lands, and silenced voices. Yet, within this darkness, the resilience and resurgence of Native communities illuminate a path forward, one that calls for truth, justice, and reconciliation.